Buddy, how are you? So our first panel is it's called Building Brands and Storytelling, the keys to audience acquisition and retention in Web3. And we're looking to actually have three experts in Web3 marketing with me. I'm actually going to let them introduce themselves.
I'm CJ Huntzinger. I'm head of platform at Galaxy Ventures. So that's the venture arm, part of Galaxy, formerly known as Galaxy Digital. Some people still refer to us. I've been there for about 3.5 years. My core job function is driving portfolio company success. So my main discipline being communications, marketing, storytelling, narrative design, event content, thought leadership, and events. I also do that for our ventures team itself.
I'm Sam Friedman, Director of Marketing, Off-Chain Labs. We're the builders of Arbitrum and other technologies that you see, including Prismatic Labs, who contributes to the Ethereum L1 ecosystem. I run the marketing team, so anything that touches the funnel just comes through my team and my purview. And so, yeah, everything from off-chain to Arbitrum to everything else, anything in our ecosystem.
Hi, I'm Dave. I do growth at Monad. Monad's a layer 1 blockchain. Parallel EVM. Community first, lots of fun, and happy to be here. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys. Okay, so the first question, and again, kind of much this to all, any of you guys want to answer it first, but how has storytelling helped build a strong brand identity? And again, it could be for your project or project you worked with before in the past, or one you're helping out.
I can kick it off. So, I mean, first off, I think one of the misconceptions with crypto marketing is kind of like what works for one company at any stage, like will work for another company at any stage. And so when it comes to storytelling, I think there's a lot of specific nuances with the company's stage. And so one of our portfolio companies, Citrea, was one of the first, debatably the first, ZK roll-up on Bitcoin. And so when they launched about a year plus, that was a story that they really leaned into back then. And now it was really, really successful because it was using language around first, really captured attention. But I think when it comes to storytelling, it's really important to really refine language choices and then update that over time. I kind of equate storytelling and shipping it to kind of product shipping, where what might work today, you're going to send an update to it, an app update, so to say, in a week, in a month, 3 months from now, as your product suite grows, as your customer base grows, as the industry changes. But I think that the core thing with storytelling, as I was saying, with word choice, is that it really is what separates you from your direct competitors. I mean, it might sound too specific or too nuanced, but as an example, it's if you're talking about if someone's running or are they sprinting, sprinting obviously implies a faster pace. And so when you're workshopping word choice with storytelling, those details really do matter. And it really does take a good amount of time in workshopping to refine it. When I do a lot of storytelling with our portfolio companies in the workshops, I think it's kind of surprising for some of our founders who haven't done it before, the amount of work and nuance and massaging of language that it takes to really, really refine a story. Then also getting them to understand that it is just kind of phase one of their story. Like any story in a movie, in a book, etc., as the plot expands, so it is how that story is told. So that's kind of how I think about storytelling in this space.
Yeah, it's educating is interesting that you brought this up, because educating founders, especially technical founders, at least from my experience, on what marketing is, how it works, how long it takes, and to really get down to what your story is and vision. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort. So that education is, I think, is something that marketers should start with when they join a protocol or advising at a protocol or a DApp or anything like that. From the Arbitrum perspective, storytelling has been crucial, because when you go back to the start of Arbitrum, everyone thought Arbitrum would be an ETH killer, or it wasn't going to be, a successful idea of having an optimistic roll-up. Fast forward to, 3 years later, everyone has an L2 or an L3 or a L1, and everyone's trying to build a chain, right? So we kind of started that trend a long time ago. And the first story that we had to tell was, all we're doing is supporting builders and making Ethereum accessible, right? And then that migrates into the next version of storytelling of, okay, now we're going to decentralize our technology. So that's, when we went into our just to be pre-token stage. And then what's our post-token stage look like? And what's our vision of the future? how are we bootstrapping builders? How are we making choices with the DAO to help promote an ecosystem and make it a growth funnel for people? And all that comes with storytelling, branding, all these exercises that you have to do and get in the weeds with. And it takes time. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of like just man hours and sweat and love to get that stuff through.
Yeah, I thought everything you guys said was completely right and awesome. I kind of covered it all. Yeah, I mean, crypto is such a speculative industry that I feel like everyone here is here because they just believe in something. It's like very like you're always thinking about the future, and so you like to stand out as a brand. I guess you have to really tell a story about the future of like people can like actually believe in something. So yeah, I mean it's kind of crucial. Like if you're just like talking about what you are today, well then, like that's cool. But if you want people to kind of like buy into your idea, join your community, be long-term aligned with you, you have to be telling them about what's going to happen a year from now so that they feel like, the time that they spend is worth it, as like part of your community or whatever. So yeah, I mean, it's like totally crucial. And yeah.
That's it. I was going to say one thing about that of like showcase, like having the vision for your future, super important. And I like that how you said like, oh, what are we going to be doing a year from now, maybe 2 years from now? There's like, I use this with my founders. I'm like, we can't get too Jetsons about this. Like we can't like get to flying cars. We have to give people tangible steps to get to flying cars. So like, what are we doing 6 months, 1 year, 2 years down the line? But anything after that becomes intangible, and also like people start to lose interest. So I think that there's a sweet spot that you work with setting that vision, so people can believe in it, and then you can also achieve it, because that's the thing with crypto is like everyone's trying to gain something and generally gain something fast. So like you want that moment of like, oh, the unlock happened, we're good to go, and then we move on to the next thing.
And the last thing I'll add about successful storytelling is I think it requires like an honest conversation within the company of like where they are in terms of the market. Are you first or are you eighth? Because if you're first, you can have a high risk, high reward approach to storytelling and really position yourself as something truly new. Also, assuming your product backs it up, because I think it goes a little understated to like how much what you're saying needs to match what the product is doing, which sounds so obvious, but that really needs to have like an honest reflection is like, are we setting proper expectations with our audience of our marketing funnels have worked? Okay, now they're in our product. Are we delivering on what we promised? But back to the same with the honest conversation with storytelling, it's like if you're first, you can really be brave with your language and position yourself as something net new, and that can be really retentive and attention grabbing. But if you're honestly, fourth, eighth, 12th, even third sometimes, like if you're really trying to use new language to describe something that already exists, it can just be a turnoff. And so sometimes you just have to be like, okay, we're just going to try to out storytell our competitors. But if we try to describe ourselves as something new and we're not, we're just going to confuse people, and then it will backfire. And then your bravery will backfire.
I actually want to expand on something that all three of you touched on, which is really looking at, let's talk a little bit more about audience, right? Because again, and also as a marketer, I run the Saber Show as well, which is, how do you sort of crack the story for the, the founders or the CEO? How do you craft the story for your retail audience if you're the retail offering? How do you craft the, same narrative, a different narrative for developers, right? So how do you guys, kind of help sort of build that brand, but then craft those different narratives for those different audiences? Because I think we all know they're very, very different.
Yeah, I can go first. I can say on the Monad side, we very deliberately try to have two stories. You have a left curve story and a right curve story, and never the mid curve. So, because like you really do have, I just think, two types of audiences. Like you have, like very, very smart people who are going to know if you're just like kind of bullshitting them like very quickly. And then you have like your like retail audience who are just kind of like super in the weeds, like love crypto, love just like basically like speculating, betting, having fun. And so I think probably a mistake that a lot of projects make is they try to like craft a story to cater to all audiences. But I think if you choose two stories, one very for the right curves and one for the left curves, that leads to the most success.
Yeah, something that the exercise that we go through a lot is just building our brand architecture. So it's always starting from vision narrative of like what what we're actually doing here, why we're here, why we built this, and it has generally nothing to do with the product, and then start to file that into different audience segments. So, Chris, kind of like you mentioned, you have, for at least on our side, you have, the builders, developers who are, launching applications on Arbitrum. You have people who are launching chains that are looking to build like their own businesses in that way. You have investors in retail for, ecosystems on our chain, our own ecosystem. And then you just have like the general, as I say, like the general crypto audience that just is looking for some sort of messaging and hype alongside with it. So everything that we do starts at the top with the architecture, and then it feeds into each one. And with that too, and I think the thing that we spend a lot of time is what's the channels and who's talking to these people. So we spend a lot of time on that because in our industry, Twitter, for some reason, seems to reign king still, or X, whatever you want to call it. So like, how do we do that? Because if you have one handle, you're not going to tell 7 different stories. You're going to get, people are going to get lost in the sauce, right? So a lot of what we do is figure out, okay, who is our subject matter expert in this thing, and how do we boost them up? How do we get their following to be bigger? How do we use YouTube and IRL events, and what are our content mechanisms that we can do outside of just the social channels? Because the social channels really should just be for brand love and building, major announcements and things like that. So alongside that, architecture, channel development is super important, and then building those to be successful is something that we spend a lot of time working on.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head thoroughly. I don't really have much to add on that. That's like effectively like what I try to coach our founders on of our portfolio companies is how to think about their storytelling and their content. Because I think one of the common mistakes you see is, especially with more like technical teams, it's like, oh, well, our social presence is too fluffy. It doesn't get into the weeds enough. It doesn't like our white paper. It's like, it's not supposed to. Like that's why you direct people there, because content and storytelling is kind of like a funnel. You have like top of funnel messaging, middle funnel messaging, and bottom funnel. Bottom funnel for like technical content, be like your white paper or your dev docs, because like the user or the reader has gone through enough of your content funnel. It's like, okay, like the slogan on top of the website is interesting. Okay, the product features happen on the website are still interested. And then the links that are throughout the website that will then point, that's just like your APIs are going to go there. And then you can really get into the weeds. And so a lot of the storytelling approaches that are trying to do too much, too often of saying like expanding on the weeds of a white paper on Twitter, like usually fall short. There can be campaigns where this works, and there's exceptions to a lot of like the best practices, like there are with anything. But to summarize, it's basically just like understanding like which channel is designed to do what, and then just doubling down on that strength. And it's a similar thing with like founder-led storytelling. It's like some of our technical CTOs like, I can't go be that like hype machine on Twitter. It's like, great, you can have a weekly thread that dives into like what you guys worked on, what's coming. You can get really technical with it because that's your core competency. And it's like, well, where are the followers coming from? It's like, maybe you're not going to get a large quantity of followers, but you get a large quality because people who are reading and engaging with your super technical writing on Twitter are there to read and learn about that. Then say the CEO, who's great at being like a charismatic persona in a public space, can then do more like the hypey storytelling aspect and get more of, say, the quantity audience. And then those two founder-led channels in tandem can be really, really effective when they use like the corporate channel to then just amplify them to everyone.
So that's funny, actually, because one of the questions I was going to bring up was on memes, right, and meme culture, right? And I mean, I think you actually pretty much nailed it on the head, actually. But if anyone else has anything I want to expand on that or add to that, because I do, it is crypto, so.
I mean, I think meme culture is important. Like, I do think that, like, the things, there is this world, our side of the internet does have that fun culture side to it. And there's a balance to play of, like, how far do you lean in as a brand or how far do you lean in as a team, right? And have voices on your team. Maybe they can lean further than your brand. I mean, potentially for legal reasons, but also for, like, just like, you don't necessarily want your brand saying everything that, some human would say. But I think meme culture is super important to the industry. There's a world where we all have to live in it. I'm not going to shill my own booth, but come by the Arbitrum booth and to get a hand sanitizer with a Pepe blowing his nose. Like, it's funny and like, it is fun and people like that stuff. So I think it's like having having like your button up technical side, but then also like your human side is really a core, and memes can help you be that.
Yeah, and then also to expand on that, like I think when you have more institutional or say like international enterprise businesses that are like meme languages, like that's not our core audience. But the other side of the industry is like if you're not like at least engaging with those jokes or that culture in a public setting, even something like a hand sanitizer pump, like if you don't show like little things like that like you get it, you're paying attention, then the more like on-chain industry native side of our industry is going to think that you're just like out of touch. And so there is a time and place for even the more institutional, international enterprise leaning companies to just like have like a cheeky little touch on being like, yeah, we listen, we're paying attention, but that's not their brand voice. So again, it's just like, it's which channel and which time with which kind of content and being thoughtful about it. So it amplifies your top level story at the end of the day.
Yeah, so that reminds me, we did a great T-shirt where we had two Pepes taking Gary Gensler to jail a couple years ago. That was hugely popular. Okay, so one other thing I think we touched on this a little bit, but I want to expand on a little bit more, which is and I've had this issue, so I'm sure you guys had as well. But basically, how do you get the founders to focus? Because we all know brand building takes a long time, right? It takes years and years to build a truly successful brand and narrative out there in the space. So how do you get founders to really understand that A, they have to do that, and also to give it the time to actually grow the brand and really establish it?
Who wants to take that one first?
Yeah, this is actually probably like the biggest challenge, I think, because like some people have that personality where they like to just, be on Twitter and engaging with people, and some people don't. And it's really tough to try to force someone who just like doesn't really care about that side of things to care and to really try. And then it can even be like super frustrating for them when they start putting in all this effort and it doesn't pay off because they're just like not good at talking or whatever. So you kind of really need to like help them and like hold their hand, maybe like create content for them. I feel like I've seen founders who just like very obviously like their tweets are being ghostwritten. But yeah, it's such a challenge. And I feel like if you don't know that side of things, you just like need to hire someone who does to help you out. And ideally that person has like shown that they know how to run a personal account, and then you get into the territory of like hiring an influencer or whatever. But it's like, if your goal is to have the founder have a presence, you probably need someone who has shown they know how to grow social presence. So,
I mean, I totally agree with that, because you do need someone to like kind of really be the advocate out there for, your token or your chain, whatever it is that you're doing with your project.
Yeah. For us at Galaxy Ventures and our portfolio companies, it's probably one of the most common conversations I have is we have a lot of technical founding teams who don't have like a founding member who's done marketing, content, storytelling, whatever you want to call it. And so it's at least like kind of at the jump, like when we're starting to get to know each other, it's kind of like a level setting conversation of like the realities is like the most successful companies on earth in crypto are not like have a brand. The ones that get away with success by not having a brand intentionally are more so the exception than the rule. And then it's also just kind of like reiterative reminders of like, here's a thread that did really well. Here's why. Here's like a broadcast interview that was really successful. Here's why. Also reminding them that these like top of crypto Twitter threads that they're seeing go super viral is probably one of few viral threads that this company's ever had. But to them, they're seeing a thread or like a feed that is all the top performing tweets because that's what keeps you on Twitter. But the reality is like a lot of these accounts have like underperforming tweets, but they're only seeing like the stuff that's working. This is also just taking a lot of like reps and time, years, and it's just kind of reminding them that it is just like an ongoing game and giving them resources and examples of what works. And then once they eventually do start to do that, and sometimes it is through hiring like agencies to ghostwrite for them, but like they can actually see quantifiable business ROI from content, then they're like, oh, and then sometimes that's when like it starts to click for them. Because previously to that, it could have been more kind of like this like esoteric of like, why am I just like writing on the internet? And once they see like dollars coming in the door because of it, in addition to the conversations I've been having over time, in addition to the examples that I've sent them, then after you can start to see it really, really come to life. But it's definitely an uphill battle because, I mean, being a public persona is not something a lot of people want to do, myself included.
But yeah, here you are. Sam, do you want to add anything to that, or you think we got it?
Yeah, I think we got it. I mean, they have everyone should counter that tries, and I think one thing too that has worked for us or for me is like I just gas them up like crazy. I'll be like, this tweet was a banger. Like, just like really like I don't know, people want to be validated. Like that's a part of marketing, and people want that validation, give it to them. It's helpful. Show them again the ROI, show them why, everything like that. But yeah, I would like always throw a text to like the CEO, be like, this was a banger, give me a follow-up, like let's go. So
that's awesome, man. So I just want to do one last question. We'll do it like a kind of like a speed round. So besides X, what's your favorite channel for basically getting narrative out there? Because I mean, we all know what the default one is.
I'd say Discord. Should I explain why? As a speaker?
Yeah, no, go for it.
Yeah, Discord probably, because you need to build a community of people who really rally around your brand and your story, and those people need to spend a lot of time thinking about you and your story. And if they only follow you on Twitter, like, they'll see your tweets and like, oh, it's cool. But if they're like in your Discord, hanging out, making friends, then they're gonna really like start to buy into the vision.
I think YouTube's pretty important as an infrastructure too. I think there's two funnels of developers. There's ones that go to docs, and then there's one that go to YouTube and like want to see content of how to do something. So I think feeding both of those is really important.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's kind of a divergent it's similar to YouTube. I was gonna say broadcast interviews actually, which is a hard place for startups to get into. But the credibility or like validation you get from say like a CNBC broadcast interview or like a Bloomberg broadcast interview, they're gonna run it on their socials. It'll be on their website. It'll be on literal international television. And not to bring it to X, you said we can't, but it's the kind of content that can like really live on for a long time. You can put it on your website. You can put it in your newsroom part of your website. You can cut up clips of it. You can put it on any social channel that has video, which is every social channel. So I would say that. And also then it's like, then you're putting your story in front of like the general audience, right? And then so that's how people really start to learn about it. But it is a pretty tough door to break into. And so I also guess for sake of saying something interesting, I'll also say that a really well done event can be a great place to bolster your story. If you time it with say a quality product launch and a research paper, you curate the guest list, you do it in a great space, you get the whole room talking about your new product that's like supported by data that's in a data report that you just put out. You bring reporters, they write about that data report. Your customers are there to talk about the product. Your prospects are there to get like word of mouth marketing for your existing customers. The whole room is talking about your story, supported by data. The product works, reporters are writing about it. And that can be a very like sticky moment in someone's year to remember, oh, like that event was sick, here's why. And then the reporters are putting out headlines about it. But you need a lot of things to like come together at the right time, but to work. But when they can work well, they can really, really be like flagship moments in a marketing campaign.
It's funny. I would actually, Ondo, I think just did that with their event in New York. It was like 2 weeks ago. Was it like 2 weeks ago, Matt? Yeah, I would say they basically nailed it with that perfectly. Well, guys, thank you very much. Thanks for coming. Thanks, everybody.
Actually, it was 2 questions. We can do questions. Hey, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say kind of just memes as a tool. So if you're a brand, I really recommend having a mascot. And the reason for that is if you have a mascot, then you can get memes created around the mascot to kind of like express different emotions. And then as like your community starts using those memes to express themselves, they'll start taking on the identity of a community member of your project. So it's kind of one of those like memes is kind of like Zoomer culture, but just like super powerful, especially if you have a mascot involved.
I got a good one for you. AI. If your marketing is not using AI, let's see. Yeah. Oh, I mean, ChatGPT. I mean, like, if you have a copywriter today, I mean, I think you guys all agree with this, then you're a dinosaur, right? Like,
there's certain things like that AI is really good for. One thing that I found is I'm not like personally the best in Excel, but AI has helped me a ton of being like, oh, how do I do audience segmentation? How do I take the raw data from a Twitter or YouTube or wherever and actually create outcomes that I can like see and measure against? That's been super helpful without having to, purchase like a tool like a Sprinkler Social or something that, has like a really robust off-chain sentiment tracking and stuff like that. So using AI for that's good. And then also like it's just like really nice to have like a quick start sometimes, especially when you're moving quickly. So but it's never better than you are as a writer, so always fact check.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Does anyone else have any other questions? Yeah, please.
Yes, I think the need is to start with things like, you start use like every section, you use hub base, and officer, you use this, like laundry in general, like officially with that. In fact, you guys come to see just this guy, you kind of pass away to good. In this, each mean, I think you fail over portfolio will be this. Yeah, it's something I deal with a lot too with portfolio companies, because I think there's generally like a if you build it they will come kind of mindset, which obviously doesn't work and doesn't scale. The way that I kind of frame it is I have like a messaging and positioning workshop that I do with our portfolio companies, and I usually frame it around like, what do you want your legacy to be? How do you want to be remembered in 3, 5, 7 years? And so it's effectively asking the same question, because when you frame it around now, we're like, what's like your 5 dream media headlines? You either learn like they're way too in the weeds on the product, and then you can like scope it back to legacy, because when people think about their legacy, they tend to not remember like product features. They think about like that one like soundbite of like, when I'm in a room, this is what people are saying about my company. This is what I want them to say. So that's also how I kind of frame it. And then also just using examples of like these companies are explaining their why and this is why it works. But I found that framing your own legacy has been pretty successful.
Yeah, the one thing that I found in was something that I had to learn the hard way was not every product launch is a product launch. Like, and that's the thing that I think explaining that to a founder is really challenging. Like, you spend a lot of time, a lot of resources on so many things, but that doesn't mean that it is going to be your number one hero of the year or the thing to do. So explaining why that is, using like very common things like your iPhone upgrades all the time. And people work very hard on that consistently, but like iOS 1.5.3 doesn't get the light of day, right? So explaining that, it's not a product launch, it's a feature launch. And then this is why. But like the feature is crucial and important and validate along the way goes really far. But same, I came from agency world and like I got rocked really hard my first 6 months because I was trying to figure out, like, everyone was like, we have this release, it's going to be amazing. And I'm like, okay, but then really understanding the product now, it's just features, right? But features are important.
Sam, I agree with that one 1,000%. Does anyone else have any other questions?
Yeah, you just have to like know their background because I'm an avid crypto Twitter user. Like I've been on crypto Twitter every day for like 7 years straight. I've remembered like every single influencer who's ever like scammed someone. And so like if I see your brand from that person, I'm immediately think you're a scam. But like there are like, super good faith people who just naturally got a ton of followers because they have awesome content and love crypto. And yeah, I think you kind of like have to work with them, honestly. I would recommend even like hiring them rather than just paying them if you find really good ones.
Yeah, I basically agree. Be super selective with them. They can do more brand damage than brand good if you pick the wrong ones. Also, if people who basically like you see a project using KOLs, it's kind of like, yeah, are the good KOLs? What are they saying? Which I think is like pretty straightforward. It's the same mindset I have around like tools. Just be selective, pick the right ones because KOLs can do more damage than good if managed properly.
I couldn't agree more. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay. Well, thanks. we're going to bring our next panel. Thank you.